And people also want to get back to the theater. They want to see shows. They want to be entertained. They want to be entertained in person and get away from the TV and see people performing on the stage. And now we are joined by James R. Kuhl from the Tipping Point Theater on the Oakland County Megacast. James, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
How are you? How's your team at Tipping Point?
We're doing okay. It's tough. We're sticking with things. Vast majority of things, like everybody else, are being done remotely, but we're doing everything that we can to keep the business floating.
The performing arts has been hit particularly hard, I would imagine, with theaters closed, shows postponed and canceled, and so on. How have local artists, particularly local thespians, kept the art moving forward and maintained entertainment for their local audiences during this crisis?
Well, that's a big question and a tough one. I think that you're absolutely right that there's a vast majority of our nonprofit theaters are definitely trying to hunker down to survive this. We're an organization that already depends on the donations to cover a vast majority of our costs, being nonprofit. And so we stretch a dollar as far as it can absolutely go. And so when we can't do shows, when we can't rehearse, when we can't perform, it's a really kind of scary time for the industry. But the thing that we're seeing now is we're seeing a lot of theaters adapting and to keep connection to their audience, because through online means and creating online content. But a lot of that, it's not theater. Theater depends on people, a group of people being in the same place at the same time, and our heartbeats getting in sync and our breath getting in sync, and sharing and exploring what it is to be human. And when you can't be in that same room, now it becomes something a little bit different. And so a lot of it has to do with maintaining connection to each other and maintaining connection to our audiences. And so there's a lot of different avenues that have started to accomplish those things. You see a lot of talks with artists and other local businesses. You're seeing some play readings going online, but all of these things are about keeping connection to our audience.
I have a bit of a theater background myself, and I grew up with a lot of people that were much more passionate about theater and about acting than necessarily I was. And one thing that I was always around growing up, particularly in high school, was forensics, and that's another kind of one person performing art where there's there's monologue involved, there's some story involved where one person's playing multiple characters. Have we seen more of that maybe in the virtual realm from the actors you're in contact with and other local entertainment artists in the area through this crisis?
I did. I know forensics. I did it in high school as well. It is one of those, starting points for a lot of individuals in high school. And some of the things that we're seeing now in theaters across the country in this attempt to reopen, as we adjust and are looking for those one-person shows so that we don't have to worry about the interaction between people. Because there's a good friend of mine, another local artist, Guy Sandville at the Purple Rose. He says that theater is a contact sport. We have to be in contact with each other for, exploring these things. And so the one-person show, I think you're going to see a lot more of them moving into the future. But a lot of it depends on the restrictions and what it is that we're going to do to keep the artists safe and keep the audience safe as well.
Talking to James R. Kuhl from the producing artistic director at Tipping Point Theater on the Oakland County Megacast. Pre-COVID, shows were getting prepared, rehearsals were going on, they were scheduled. People may have already bought their tickets at that point. We had people on our team that were ready to get going on some of their shows and had them postponed and canceled as well. Any plans for reconvening those shows, maybe starting another rehearsal process and bringing those back to the theater? Or are those shows gone and you're moving on after this crisis ultimately passes, whenever that may be?
I think that a lot of theaters right now are just pausing. Like there's a lot of pausing where the productions were, the ones that haven't been produced yet. And I think a lot of places are looking at how it is that they can unpause and continue once it is that the restrictions are lifted. From the people that I've been talking with, there is a lot of talk of taking those shows that were basically canceled and putting them into upcoming seasons and rescheduling them into the future. Certainly not all of them are going to make it to the end or into upcoming seasons, but I think that you're going to see a lot of the shows that were paused that can be produced safely are going to come back in upcoming seasons.
You mentioned earlier keeping the theaters safe for the actors and for those who and for the patrons coming in watching the shows. Any plans in place now to make the transition back to reopening the theater when that may happen that are in place to keep social distance and to keep safety standards at as best level as is humanly possible at Tipping Point Theater?
Well, specifically at Tipping Point, there really are three facets to this, and there are plans that are needed for all of them. First and foremost, we have the artists as a group that we're looking into. We also have our staff that we have to keep safety safety protocols in, and then we also have to develop safety protocols for our audience members. And so the things that we're seeing right now is that Tipping Point Theater is a professional theater company, so that means we contract with the Actors Equity Association, which is the union of professional actors. And so the Actors Equity has just very recently, within the last couple of days, released their 4 criteria for being able to allow their membership to safely come back to work. And those 4 criteria all need to be addressed, and they include making sure that the virus itself in your area is under control. It involves the theater space itself and guidelines for being able to safely rehearse. And a lot of those are going to be very difficult things that we as producers need to make sure that we keep in mind and make a very solid plan so that artists can feel safe coming back to work. So there's one part of it that we do have moving. There's another aspect of it for our audience. There are now articles out there about what theater looks like from an audience standpoint for social distancing. And that's going to involve a lot of reworking of what our current seating arrangements are. Because right now we literally sit directly next to people, and people right behind you, and people right in front of you. And so what you're going to see, and what you're going to see here at Tipping Point, is we hope to reconfigure our seating banks to make sure that we stay socially distant for the time period that we need to stay socially distant. So we have a lot of plans in place there. We're going to be looking at an increase in the sanitation, in disinfecting before and after performances, and what it looks like to even pick up your tickets, the flow of audience to get their tickets to their seats, use restrooms and things of that nature. All of it needs to be given consideration. And then the third part is the staff. How is it that the staff can serve both of these groups? Because we take care of the artists and make sure that all of the artists have what it is that they need, and we take care of the audience members as well. And this mixing of these 3 different groups is going to be a challenge. And this is why you're going to see a lot of delays in when it is that we can come back. And there's a variety of different scenarios that theaters all over the country are making. Broadway, I think their most optimistic was after Labor Day was the announcement. I'm not positive if that has moved, but we also have the Guthrie in Chicago that has said nothing until March of 2021. And you see everything in between. A lot of theaters saying nothing for 2020, and all of it depends on making sure that all 3 of these circles are going to be safe, because we can't do what it is that we do until we're sure that all 3 are being treated equally, and the needs of those to keep them safe are all taken care of.
James R. Kuhl, thanks so much for that was such great insight, and it's so great having you on the show, talking with you. So we were also wondering, the actors themselves, they're just, I have a theater background myself as well, and there are just so many moments on stage that are so crucial. When you're in a storyline, when you're creating moments and building up to those, moments of, climax in a show, the characters need to be close to each other. I mean, there's physical moments that need to happen in order for the audience to feel a certain, certain emotions taking place. So how will that be, implemented once we are able to have, theater again? Will those face-to-face moments still be taking place, or is there a plan to have the actors themselves socially distance?
Right now, in my personal opinion, there aren't too many shows that exist where actors can be socially distant from each other. You're absolutely right that the intimacy and the vulnerability and the exploration of humanity, it pretty much is a prerequisite that we have to be in contact with each other. And that's why the guidelines and the guideposts that the Actors Equity Association has put out are very good at making sure that we address those types of things. And that's why they're saying that the virus needs to be in control before it is that actors can come back to work, because there's a necessity in order to have that particular contact. So with some of the things that are happening is there are some playwrights out there that are adjusting their plays to be able to be done more easily virtually. And that is absolutely wonderful to keep theater going. But that is something that is going to be looking more in the area of film or television. But those types of adaptations are happening. And there are definitely plays that are out there that don't require interactions. And I think that you could do them and keep the actors socially distanced. Not many, but they are out there. And I think that you're going to see a spike in the number of productions of those particular shows. So I guess the short answer is there's not a way to do it without actors being in contact with each other, which is why we have to make sure that that the virus is under control, that we have testing and tracking systems in place, and that we continue with disinfecting things to the best of our ability, because everybody needs to be comfortable. It's not just about the audience, it's about the staff and the artists equally.
James R. Kuhl joining us from the Tipping Point Theater. He is their producing artistic director. Just a couple more minutes with you, James, before we have to let you go. You've begun a series called Share Your Brilliant Things on YouTube. Tell us a little bit about that series.
Well, the theater Tipping Point did the play Every Brilliant Thing, which is a one-person show. It was written by Duncan Macmillan. And what that show is, Every Brilliant Thing, is it tells the story of a list that a little boy, when he is 7 years old, starts in order to help his mom. And his mom suffers from a mental illness, depression. She has attempted to take her own life when he is 7 years old, is the first time that she attempts it. And this is the way that this 7-year-old processes things, that he wants to be able to give his mom a list of brilliant things, to reasons to keep going, things worth living for. And what ends up happening throughout the play is that the list continues to come back to him as he gets older. And every time that the list comes back to him, it's at very important times. And at the end of the play, we find out that by creating the list for himself, it changes how he views the world and the therapeutic and benefits to the narrator of the story. And so after we did this original production that really addresses the taboos of talking about depression and mental illness, but it's also very highly based in suicide prevention. After we did that initial 6-week run, we started touring it around to our local communities. We started partnering with organizations to bring it to libraries, to schools, to town hall meetings. And what ended up happening when everything got shut down, it wasn't just the programming here at the theater that got shut down. All of those outreach programs that involved groups of people getting together. So all of those productions of Every Brilliant Thing got postponed and canceled as well. And so the thing that we started is an initiative to make our own list of brilliant things in order to share with the world. Because right now we are seeing an increase in the feeling of isolation. We're seeing an increase in the need for help and support in the area of mental illness. And for us here at Tipping Point, we want to spread that message that you are not alone, that things will get better. And we want to do that through the structure of Every Brilliant Thing. It's to show that people have things worth living for. There are brilliant things still in the world. And we want everybody to go to our social media and sites and our website to see how it is that you can submit your brilliant thing to add to the list. We'll add it to the montage and post them periodically as we get enough of them. And this is all happening in conjunction with trying to negotiate the rights to release our production of Every Brilliant Thing virtually. So while we're trying to get that thing to happen, we thought, you know what, there is a need for everybody to remind us that you are not in this alone, that there are things worth living for, and that things will get better. So we want to encourage everybody to participate in this brilliant thing. It takes 10 seconds to record yourself doing your brilliant thing and telling us what it is and to submit it for us.
Well, that's an absolutely incredible effort, and it's something that people need right now. Entertainment has always been a form of escapism for people, and whether your preferred entertainment is the theater or is television or is film or is music, in some ways that is an escape, and in some ways that's your way of expressing yourself when maybe communicating with another person isn't the way that is best for you to do that. And Every Brilliant Thing, and share your brilliant things on YouTube. It's a fantastic way to spread some of the positive messages and shows of support when we can't be together. And it's an absolutely fantastic effort that you and Tipping Point Theater are doing. So you mentioned that people can go to your social media and your website to get involved. Go ahead and feel free to give us those links, that information, and so we can spread that to our audience.
Great. So we're on Facebook, Tipping Point Theater. We have our own. We go to our website, tippingpointtheater.com. We are on Instagram. We're on Twitter. All of these places you can go, and the guidelines are there. It's very simple to record and submit. Look for all of those details. Just Google us, Tipping Point Theater, and you're going to find easily how it is that you can get there to submit your brilliant thing. And then share the post asking for brilliant things, because we want this to be universal. The more that you can see that these types of things, this humanity experience is young, old, black, white, gay, straight, all of them. We are all in this together, and there is a shared human experience. And so we want to show that diversity in the list of brilliant things as well.
At its core, the sharing of human experiences and emotions is what acting is. It's what performing arts is, and it's so great and so nice to know that in our community, in our area, that something like this has been born and is going on and is helping people, hopefully, through this really tough time. James R. Kuhl, producing artistic director at Tipping Point Theater, thank you for being with us today on the Oakland County MegaCast.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.